Comparison of block, phase and equalized checks. What we've got to try and do, if we want to be effective, we want people to be gainfully employed as much as possible. And so when we look at this type of relationship, in a block check, so I've worked block checks. In fact, I've worked every possible combination, but I've worked block checks. And so an aeroplane comes into the hangar, and it's going to be in the hangar for some weeks. And we strip it. It's on a block check. We take the engines off, maybe we take the pylons off, we take all the fuel off, we empty the fuel tanks, we vent the fuel tanks, we strip out the cabin, we take the lavatories, the galleys, the cabin floor, everything. And we then start doing inspections, service bulletins, mods, and so on and so on and so on, and put the airplane back together. That's a typical block check scenario. And then as the airplane goes back together, we get everything working again, and finally we put it all back together and we engine run it, maybe we might even flight test it, and then that's it. That's the evolution. But during that period, think what happens. The airplane comes into the hangar. It's being jacked up. Well, we just need a jacking crew. We don't need anybody else. You can't go on the airplane while it's being jacked up. So we need a small number of people. Okay, now it's jacked up. It's taken a couple of hours, now it's jacked up. And everybody can go on the airplane. But we want to drain the fuel tanks. Okay, well, drain the fuel tanks. We can't have electric on the airplane. So now there's no electric while we take all the fuel off. So nobody can work on it again. And so it goes on. And so if you were to say how many guys do you need this day, this day, this day, and then we want to strip the airplane. Now we need lots of people. We're taking everything off the airplane. So there's work for everybody. Now we've got everything off the airplane and we're starting to do inspections. So we need the people to do inspections to do the inspections. And they raise job cards. And now again we've got the need for people. And then it's quiet. We've got the quiet where the big stuff's going on. The heavy modifications. The rework, pylon rework or whatever's going on. And again, core stuff. But there's no electrics on the aircraft. So there's not much work for the electricians and so on. But I've seen it so that the same crew works on that airplane from day 1 to day X. I've even seen it where the radio guy, there's no power on the aircraft. And the foreman says, who wants to work overtime? And the radio guy says, I'll work overtime. And so he says, okay. And so the radio guy works overtime, even there's no power on the aircraft. Why? Well, you can't discriminate against the radio guys. It's not fair. So, madness. And the cost is ultimately destroys the company because it's really, really not productive. Now, imagine it in a different way. Imagine it that the production planning guys have got the control of the labour. And you, as production planning, you will allocate, with some spare, you're not going to leave yourself short, but you will allocate the correct labour for each part of the check. Imagine that. And imagine that when you don't use the labour, there is something else for them to do. Well, that's what one company does. When they are not needed on the job, they are working on another very nice job. It's a dismantling. They buy an aeroplane, and you will dismantle that aeroplane unless you're working on an aircraft. So today, you're working on the aircraft. Tomorrow, we don't need you. You can carry on with the dismantling job. Or you're in the workshop. Or you're on the line or you're doing something else. Very, very nice way of controlling it. And it makes a difference. The efficiency of base maintenance labour goes from around about 45-50% up to as high as you can make it depending on what you're doing. But at 45% efficiency means that in a 5-day week you work 2.5 days. Not very efficient.